Cody was no longer the man Meri had once loved. His thoughts drifted to other women, and she wondered if this was her karma. The courtroom fell silent as Meri entered, her presence rippling through the Brown family like a shockwave. Whispers spread quickly. Was she really here to reclaim her place beside Cody? Just as the tension peaked, Robyn rose to her feet, her objections slicing through the air like a blade. In that instant, it became clear, this wasn't about love or reconciliation. This was about power, legacy, and who would control the Brown family's future. The gavel cracked once, echoing across the chamber. The balance of the family trembled. Meri sat at the plaintiff's table, hands folded, trembling only slightly. Her gaze never wavered from Cody, the man she had once called forever. He sat across the aisle, jaw tight, eyes fixed anywhere but hers. Beneath his rigid posture, a storm brewed. This wasn't a dispute over paperwork. This was about whether Meri, the first wife, could carve her way back into a family that had spent years erasing her. Rumors had swirled for months. Late-night phone calls, private talks, a flicker of reconciliation. Some were electrified by the possibility. Others, none more than Robyn, were enraged. Robyn clutched Cody's arm as if afraid he'd vanish. She wasn't just another wife. She was the one who had crowned herself guardian of Cody's new chapter. The one who endured while others walked away. Meri's return threatened not just her role, but her very identity. What if Robyn's status as Cody's chosen partner was nothing more than a placeholder? The judge's gaze swept the courtroom, but the tension wasn't his. It hung between Meri and Robyn, two women bound by the same man, separated by bitterness so thick it vibrated in the air. Christine and Janelle were absent, but their ghosts lingered. Every fight, every betrayal, every tear over Coyote Pass echoing faintly through the courtroom walls. Meri lifted her chin. For years, she'd been mocked for hope, painted as a fool. But now the balance shifted. This wasn't about begging for love. It was about demanding what was rightfully hers. If she proved her case, Robyn's carefully built empire would unravel piece by piece. Opening arguments began. Meri's lawyer laid out how she had been silenced, yet still contributed financially. Bank transfers, property filings, and text messages flashed across screens. Robyn pressed her lips tight. Cody stared at the floor. Robyn's attorney struck back, painting Meri as unstable and opportunistic, a danger to Cody's fragile stability. The words cut deep, but Meri remained still. Her silence made the gallery lean closer, because silence suggested she carried truth sharp enough to shatter everything. Witnesses were called, friends, neighbors, business partners. Some recalled Meri's isolation, others her persistence. But then the thunderclap came. A former friend testified that Meri and Cody had been meeting privately. Robyn's face flushed red. She clutched Cody's arm until he yanked it free, a gesture louder than testimony. The next day, Robyn entered like a storm, heels striking like gavel blows. Meri sat calm, her eyes steady, unnerving Robyn more than any outburst. Robyn's lawyer objected to Meri's very right to be heard, calling her a ghost of the past. Gasps filled the room. Cody didn't move. Didn't defend Robyn. Hesitation cracked his mask, and Robyn saw it. Fury burned in her eyes, not at Meri, but at Cody. Meri's lawyer seized the moment. This is not about destabilization. This is about control. My client claims not what belongs to someone else, but what has always been hers. The judge denied Robyn's objection. Meri's right to be heard stood. Robyn gasped, pale as if the ground had disappeared beneath her. The gallery erupted. Meri smiled faintly, not triumph, but recognition. The storm deepened when Meri herself took the stand. For years, viewers had seen fragments of her, the hopeful wife, the forgotten partner. Now, unfiltered and under oath, she revealed everything. Her testimony was calm, surgical. She spoke of building homes, raising children, carrying weight long before Robyn appeared. Her words weren't bitter, they were undeniable. She recalled Cody's handwritten notes, promises inked in his hand. Robyn shifted in her seat, desperate for Cody to intervene. He didn't. Then Meri dropped her bombshell. She and Cody had spoken privately, multiple times in the past year, about reconciliation. Gasps filled the room. Reporters scribbled furiously. Robyn exhaled sharply, nearly screaming. Her lawyer objected, but the judge overruled. Robyn trembled, looking less like a protector and more like a woman watching her empire crack. Cody closed his eyes, head bowed. The gallery knew Meri wasn't lying. Robyn broke. She leapt up, shouting that Meri was twisting the truth. The judge's gavel slammed, ordering silence, but the damage was done. Robyn's fear was naked for all to see. The next day, the courtroom braced for more. Meri's voice remained calm as she revealed financial contributions she had made long after being pushed aside. Bank records confirmed it. Robyn's face drained of color. Meri wasn't clawing back. She had never left the foundation. Emails followed. Late-night messages between Cody and Meri. Robyn sobbed openly. "You promised me. You said she was gone." Her words cut deeper than any evidence. Then the final blow. Cody's voicemail to Meri. "I don't know what I'm doing anymore. I thought I built something solid, but it feels like sand. I don't know if I shut the door on you too soon." Silence suffocated the courtroom. Robyn wept. Cody sat hollow. Meri remained unreadable. When Cody finally took the stand, the room held its breath. Asked if he had spoken of reconciliation with Meri, he admitted it. Yes. The gallery erupted. Robyn gasped, turning away, tears streaming. Pressed harder, Cody faltered. His words wavered between defense and confession. Finally, the question came. If these conversations meant nothing, why hide them from your wife? Cody whispered the truth. Because I didn't want her to know I was thinking about Meri. Gasps rippled through the gallery. Robyn sobbed openly, her hold on Cody shattered. By the time Robyn herself took the stand, her strength was gone. She wept, insisting she had been loyal, that every sacrifice was for the family. But under cross-examination, her words collapsed. She admitted she hadn't known about the voicemail. She hadn't known about the conversations. And with that, her control dissolved. Evidence showed she benefited from Meri's contributions. Her denials rang hollow. Cody sat silent, refusing to rescue her. The final question broke her. Isn't it true your objection isn't legal, but fear that Meri might reclaim the place you thought was yours? Robyn froze. Tears streamed. She whispered, I just don't want to lose everything. Gasps echoed through the courtroom. Robyn's crown shattered. Meri sat tall, silent, her presence undeniable. The gallery buzzed long after the judge struck his gavel to adjourn for the day. Reporters spilled into the hallway, microphones thrust toward anyone with a Brown connection. Meri takes back the spotlight. One headline was already drafted. Another read, Robyn's fall from grace. But inside the courthouse, the silence lingered like smoke after a fire. Robyn slumped in her chair, her hand still clutching Cody's sleeve, though it looked less like possession and more like desperation. He didn't pull away, but he didn't lean in either. He sat rigid, hollow, his gaze fixed on the polished wood of the table as though it held answers he had long since lost. Meri, by contrast, rose gracefully. She gathered her papers, tucked them neatly into her folder, and walked out without a word. No gloating, no glance backward. Her silence was the sharpest weapon in the room. By the seventh day, anticipation was electric. The courthouse overflowed. Spectators pressed shoulder to shoulder, reporters stacking cameras like weapons of their own. The judge entered stern, gavel cracking once to restore order. Today, he said, we will hear final testimony. All eyes turned to Cody. He looked worn, his once proud stance reduced to slumped shoulders and tired eyes. When he took the stand, the tension was palpable. The attorney wasted no time. Mr. Brown, do you love your wife, Robyn? The gallery leaned forward. Robyn's eyes locked on him, pleading. Cody swallowed hard. Yes, he said at last, his voice rough. But, his words faltered. But I can't deny I still feel tied to Meri. The room erupted. Gasps, whispers, camera shutters snapping like gunfire. Robyn's hand flew to her mouth. Meri's face remained unreadable, though her fingers tightened slightly around her pen. The attorney pressed further. So you admit your loyalty is divided? Cody shut his eyes. I admit, I don't know where my loyalty belongs anymore. The judge banged his gavel, but the shockwaves were irreversible. Robyn's face crumpled. Meri sat straighter. The balance shifted yet again. Cross-examination came fast and brutal. Robyn's lawyer attacked Cody, framing him as confused, unreliable, a man chasing nostalgia instead of protecting the family he had left. But the words rang hollow. The courtroom had already seen enough. When Cody stepped down, the gallery buzzed like a hive on fire. Reporters scribbled headlines before the ink could dry. Cody torn in two. First wife rises. Finally, the judge called for closing arguments. Meri's lawyer rose first. His words were measured, steady, deliberate. This is not about past love. It is not about personal preference. It is about recognition. Meri Brown was not erased, She was silenced. But her contributions, her sacrifices, her voice remain etched in the very foundation of this family. Her voice remain etched in the very foundation of this family. To deny her is to deny the truth itself. He sat, and the weight of his words hung in the air. Robyn's attorney stood next, fire in her eyes. This case is not about silencing Meri. It is about protecting what remains of stability. Meri represents chaos, disruption, danger. To allow her influence again is to invite collapse. But the words cracked under their own weight. The gallery wasn't convinced. Even Cody's eyes stayed low, his silence betraying her. The judge leaned forward, his hands clasped. "This court will recess," he announced. "Tomorrow I will deliver my ruling." The gavel struck and the room exhaled in chaos. Reporters stormed out, headlines already forming. Meri closed her folder, her calm unbroken. Robyn wiped her tears, her mascara smudged, her pride in pieces. Cody lingered at the defense table, staring at nothing, as though wondering if the man he had become could survive the choice that now loomed. For the Brown family, tomorrow would decide more than legal rights. It would decide who still held the power to shape their legacy. And as the courtroom emptied, one truth echoed louder than any gavel. Whatever the verdict, nothing would ever be the same again. The courthouse was packed beyond capacity the next morning. Cameras lined the steps, reporters shouted over one another, and by the time the doors opened, the hallways surged like floodwaters. This wasn't just a legal decision anymore. It was a spectacle, a trial of loyalty and legacy that had captured the nation. Inside, the courtroom buzzed with the low hum of whispers, the scrape of pens on notepads, the click of cameras sneaking forbidden shots. The air itself felt heavy, charged, as though everyone knew the scales were about to tip. Meri sat poised, immaculate, her expression serene but unreadable. Robyn was the opposite, restless, shifting, hands wringing in her lap. Her face bore the marks of sleepless nights, red eyes, smudged makeup, lips pressed too tightly together. Cody sat between them, but closer to Robyn, as though proximity might redeem his silence. He looked hollowed out, a man carrying the weight of two futures and unable to choose either. The judge entered, robes sweeping, gavel striking once. Silence fell like a curtain. "This court," he began, "has reviewed the testimony, the evidence, and the arguments presented by both parties." His voice was low, steady, but it carried like thunder. "What we have witnessed over these past days is not simply a dispute of law. It is the unearthing of a history, a family history built on sacrifice, on silence, and on the voices of women too long overlooked." Robyn's breath caught. Meri's chin lifted ever so slightly. The judge continued, "The question before this court is whether Meri Brown's rights, legal, financial, and personal, were unjustly disregarded in favor of a narrative that erased her." He paused, scanning the room. "The answer is clear. This court rules in favor of the plaintiff, Meri Brown." The room exploded. Gasps, shouts, reporters scrambling for the door. Robyn shook her head violently, whispering, "No, no, no," as tears spilled freely. Cody froze, pale as marble, unable to look at either woman. Meri remained still, a single breath escaping her lips, the faintest flicker of victory crossing her features before vanishing into composure. The judge's gavel slammed again. "Order!" he barked. "Order in this courtroom?" When the noise finally settled, he spoke again. "Meri Brown is hereby recognized as retaining her rightful legal and financial standing within the Brown family estate and business holdings. Furthermore, the court acknowledges her ongoing contributions, emotional and material, that have been unfairly dismissed. This ruling restores her authority in matters from which she was excluded." Robyn let out a broken sob, collapsing back into her chair. The gallery leaned forward, desperate to catch every word. "This is not a ruling of love, nor of personal preference," the judge said firmly. "It is a ruling of justice." With one final crack of the gavel, the session ended. Meri rose slowly, deliberately. She didn't gloat. She didn't even smile. She gathered her papers and walked out as reporters surged toward her, flashes igniting like lightning. She moved through them with the calm of a queen reclaiming her throne. Robyn sat shattered, mascara streaking down her cheeks, gripping Cody's arm as though he were the last branch over a cliff. But Cody didn't grip back. He stared at Meri's retreating figure, his face unreadable, regret, longing, confusion all colliding behind his eyes. The gallery buzzed with a single question on every lip, every headline, every broadcast that night. Had Meri Brown just won back more than her rights? Had she just won back Cody himself? And as the courthouse emptied into chaos, one thing was certain. This verdict was not an ending. It was the spark of a new war. The courthouse steps had become a battlefield. Reporters swarmed like locusts, microphones thrust forward, cameras snapping with the relentlessness of lightning. Meri emerged first, flanked by her attorney. The crowd surged toward her, shouting questions. "Meri, do you want Cody back? Was this about love or money? What do you say to Robyn?" She didn't falter. She lifted her chin, let the chaos wash over her, and answered only once. "This was about truth," she said. Her voice was calm, steady, cutting through the storm like a blade. And the truth always finds its way to the surface. No further words. No elaboration. She descended the steps like a woman who had already spoken enough. Inside, Robyn clung to Cody's arm as if it were a lifeline. Her eyes were wild, swollen with tears, her whisper frantic. "Say something. Tell them this isn't real. Tell them you don't want her." Cody didn't answer. His silence was worse than betrayal. He stood still, blank, like a man whose foundation had cracked beneath him. When Robyn realized he wouldn't move, wouldn't fight, her fury erupted. "You still love her, don't you?" she hissed, her voice breaking. "All these years and you never let her go." Cody finally looked at her. His eyes weren't cruel, but they weren't hers anymore either. They were haunted, searching, already somewhere else. Robyn recoiled as though struck. The gallery outside caught wind of the tension before the couple even left the courtroom. By the time they appeared, cameras were ready, flashes merciless. Robyn tried to plaster a smile, but the cracks showed. Her mascara streaked, her hand trembling in Cody's, her voice trembling as she muttered scripted lines about respecting the court, though we disagree. But the world saw the truth. Robyn Brown was broken. Cody barely spoke. When pressed, he offered only, "It's been a long journey. I need time." His words were vague, but his eyes, always flickering toward where Meri had vanished into a waiting car, spoke volumes. By nightfall, the headlines were merciless. Meri reclaims her throne. Robyn crushed by verdict. Cody's heart still with Meri. The family group chat, once buzzing with passive-aggressive remarks and strained updates, was silent. Christine had not attended, but sources close to her leaked sharp words. This is what happens when truth comes out. Janelle remained quiet, though her absence was a statement in itself. Robyn, meanwhile, locked herself away. Neighbors reported shouting, doors slamming, the sound of a woman unraveling. And Cody? He sat alone in his study, the verdict papers spread out before him. His phone buzzed endlessly, calls from producers, from Robyn's attorney, from family, but his eyes kept drifting to the one number he hadn't dialed in years, the one that now felt closer than ever. Meri's. He hovered over it, thumb trembling, knowing the moment he pressed call, the next chapter would begin. Not in court, but in the wreckage of their family. Because the judge's ruling had ended the trial. But it had only begun the war. Night had swallowed the city by the time Cody pulled into the dimly lit parking lot of a quiet diner on the edge of town. No cameras here. No reporters. Just the hum of a neon sign flickering against cracked asphalt. Meri was already inside. She sat in a corner booth, her posture elegant, her expression calm. A glass of water sat untouched before her. She looked as though she had been waiting, not just tonight, but for years. Cody hesitated at the door, the bell jingling softly as he entered. For a moment, he simply stared at her, the woman who had been his first wife. His anchor, his mistake, his ghost. Meri looked up. Her eyes met his, steady, unflinching. "Sit," she said softly. He slid into the booth across from her. For a moment, neither spoke. The silence carried the weight of 2 decades, of children raised, of promises broken, of love buried but never dead. Finally, Cody spoke. His voice was rough, almost fragile. "Why now, Meri? Why, after all these years, would you drag us into a courtroom? Put Robyn through that? Put me through that?" Meri didn't flinch. "Because silence was killing me. Because I gave everything, Cody, everything, and you let them erase me as if I'd never existed. I wasn't fighting for the past. I was fighting for the truth." He looked down, his hands twisting against each other. "I never wanted you erased." Her laugh was quiet, sharp. "But you let it happen. And that's worse." The words cut him deeper than any testimony had. He leaned forward, desperate, his voice trembling. "I thought moving on was what you wanted. I thought she gave me what you couldn't anymore." Mary's eyes flickered with pain, but her voice remained steady. What I couldn't or what you refused to see. Robyn was never the issue, Cody. You were. He stared at her, searching her face, as though the answers had been hiding in her expression all this time. As though the answers had been hiding in her expression all this time. I don't know what I'm doing anymore, he admitted, echoing the words from the voicemail that had shattered Robyn. Everything feels like sand. I look at you and it feels like home, but it also feels like a mistake I don't deserve to touch again. Meri held his gaze. You're right. You don't deserve it. But that's not the question. The question is whether you're willing to fight for it. Cody's breath caught. For the first time in years, Meri had given him a choice. Not as a wife, not as a plaintiff, but as a man. Before he could answer, a figure appeared outside the diner's window. Robyn. Her eyes were red, her face twisted with fury and devastation. She had followed him. She had seen. And in that instant, the war that had begun in the courtroom was about to spill into blood, bone, and betrayal. The bell above the diner door jingled violently as Robyn shoved it open. Heads turned from their coffee cups and late-night plates, but Robyn didn't notice. Her eyes were locked on the booth in the corner, on Cody and Meri. Meri didn't move. She sat perfectly still, her hands folded neatly on the table. Cody, however, flinched like a man caught in the middle of a crime. Unbelievable, Robyn spat, her voice cracking. The ink on the ruling isn't even dry, and here you are. With her. Robyn, Cody began, his voice low, almost pleading. No. She cut him off, stepping closer, her heels striking against the linoleum like gavel blows. Don't you dare. Don't you dare try to explain this to me. You've been explaining things for years, Cody. I should have known it always led back to her. Her voice was shaking now, not from weakness, but from rage. Diners stared openly, forks frozen mid-bite. The waitress behind the counter whispered into the phone. 911, no doubt. Meri finally spoke, her tone calm, surgical. Robyn, this isn't about you and me. It's about Cody deciding who he is without hiding behind either of us. Robyn whipped toward her, eyes blazing. Don't you dare talk to me like you're the victim. You abandoned him. You humiliated him. You broke this family, and now you come crawling back because you missed the spotlight. Meri's lips curved into the faintest trace of a smile, one that carried no humor. And yet here you are, screaming in a diner at midnight because even after everything, he still came to me. The words detonated. Gasps rippled across the room. Cody buried his face in his hands. Robyn's fury collapsed into something darker. Tears spilled hot down her cheeks as her voice cracked into a raw confession. I gave you everything, Cody. Everything. I held on when no one else would. I built a life with you while she waited in the shadows. And now, after all of it, you're still hers? The silence after her words was suffocating. Cody lifted his head slowly, his eyes rimmed with red, his voice hoarse. I don't know who I belong to anymore. Maybe I never did. Maybe I've been lying to both of you and myself for years. Robyn staggered back as though struck. Meri's composure held, but a flicker of something, pain, triumph, both at once, flashed across her face. For the first time, Cody's truth hung in the open, raw, and merciless. Robyn's voice dropped to a whisper, trembling with devastation. Then maybe you don't deserve either of us. She turned and stormed out, the bell above the door clanging like a final verdict. Cody sat in silence, shaking. Meri didn't reach for him. She didn't move at all. She only whispered so quietly he almost didn't hear it. She's right, you know. And in that diner, under the buzz of flickering neon, Cody realized the verdict hadn't chosen for him. The choice was his, and it might cost him everything. The bell above the door stopped jangling, and with it, the diner seemed to exhale. Conversations resumed in hesitant murmurs, silverware clinked, but the booth in the corner remained frozen in silence. Cody's hands were still buried in his hair. He looked up slowly, eyes bloodshot, and stared across the table at Meri. You didn't have to say that, he whispered, his voice ragged. You didn't have to twist the knife. Meri didn't flinch. I didn't twist it, Cody, I told the truth. Something you've been running from for years. He slammed his palm flat against the table, the glasses rattling. You think I wanted this? You think I wanted to be torn in half every damn day of my life? I loved you, Meri. I loved Robyn too. And look where it got us, all of us, standing in courtrooms and screaming in diners. Meri's gaze softened just a fraction. You think love is what broke us? It wasn't love, Cody. It was cowardice. You couldn't choose. You couldn't fight. You let all of us carry the weight while you hid in the middle." Her words hit him like blows, but he didn't argue. His silence was admission enough. Finally, he leaned back, his voice dropping low. "So what now? You won your case. You've got your recognition, your rights, your place back. What more do you want from me?" Meri studied him for a long, quiet moment. Her expression was unreadable, her voice measured when it came. "I don't want anything from you, Cody." He blinked, startled. "I didn't fight to win you," she continued. "I fought to win me. To prove I was never as small, never as forgettable as you all tried to make me. If you're waiting for me to beg for you again, you'll be waiting forever." The words landed with the weight of finality, but underneath them was something deeper. An invitation, perhaps, or a warning. Cody swallowed hard. His chest ached with something he couldn't name. Regret, relief, fear, desire, all tangled into one unbearable knot. "Then why meet me here?" he asked, his voice cracking. Meri's eyes locked with his, steady and unblinking. "Because I needed you to hear it. From me, not from lawyers, not from reporters. From the woman you threw away and still can't let go of." Cody's throat tightened. He wanted to argue, to deny it, but the truth was carved into his silence. Outside, a car engine roared to life. Robyn's. Her headlights cut across the diner's windows as she peeled away into the night, carrying with her not just rage, but a dangerous new clarity. Meri rose from the booth, gathering her things with the same composure she'd carried in court. She paused, looking down at Cody. "You can't serve two masters forever," she said quietly. "Sooner or later, you'll have to choose. And when you do, remember, it won't just cost you a wife. It'll cost you your soul." She walked out, leaving Cody alone in the flicker of neon light, drowning in the truth he could no longer avoid. Robyn's hands shook against the steering wheel as she sped down the empty Arizona highway. The headlights cut a wild path through the desert night, but her vision blurred with tears. Each sob broke into a gasp, jagged and uncontrollable, like something clawing its way out of her chest. Meri's words replayed in her head, each one stabbing deeper. "I didn't fight to win you. I fought to win me." Robyn slammed the brakes, gravel spraying as her SUV skidded to the shoulder. She gripped the steering wheel with both hands, her knuckles white. For years, she had been Cody's shield, his confidant, the one who stayed when others left. She had worn loyalty like armor, sacrificed reputation, friends, even family, to prove she was the chosen one. And now, a courtroom full of strangers had seen the truth. Worse, Cody himself had admitted it. He'd thought about Meri. He'd wanted Meri. Robyn's scream tore through the cabin of the car, raw and primal, echoing against the desert silence. When it finally faded, her breath came shallow and fast, her body trembling with rage. Her phone buzzed in the console. She snatched it up, her eyes narrowing when she saw the name flash across the screen. Christine. Flash across the screen. Christine. For a moment, Robyn just stared. Christine, the one who had walked away first, the one who had mocked her devotion. Christine, who now lived her life free, unburdened, while Robyn clung to scraps. Robyn's thumb hovered over the screen before finally pressing accept. "Christine," she said, her voice hoarse but steadying. There was silence on the other end, then a cool voice. "I was wondering when you'd call." Robyn's jaw clenched. "You think this is funny?" "No," Christine replied, her tone sharp. "I think it's inevitable. Cody's mess always comes back around. You just thought you were immune." Robyn's hand trembled, but she tightened her grip on the phone. "I won't let her take everything. I won't let Meri rewrite history like she's the hero." Christine gave a low, bitter laugh. "History doesn't need her to rewrite it. You've been writing it yourself for years. And now the cracks are showing." Robyn's chest heaved, her fury boiling over. "You think you've won because you left, Christine? Because you ran?" "No, I stayed. I fought. I bled for him. That has to count for something." "Maybe it did," Christine said quietly. "But tell me this, Robyn. Did he ever bleed for you?" The line went dead. Robyn stared at the phone, her reflection trembling in the black screen. For the first time, the thought crept in, not of losing Cody to Meri, not of losing her position, but of losing herself. Her hands tightened on the wheel again, her breath slowing, steadying. If Cody wouldn't fight for her, she'd fight for herself. She would scorch the earth before she let Meri walk away with the crown. Robyn started the car, the engine growling back to life. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Robyn drove until the city lights blurred into the desert horizon. She pulled into the parking lot of a cheap motel, the kind with flickering neon and curtains that never fully closed. She killed the engine and sat in silence, her chest heaving. The phone on the seat beside her lit up again, this time with a different name. Janelle. Robyn froze. Janelle never called her. Not since the fractures, not since the alliances had shifted. Slowly, almost suspiciously, Robyn swiped to answer. "What do you want?" she snapped, her voice brittle. On the other end, Janelle's voice was measured, almost too calm. "To warn you." Robyn stiffened. "About what?" "You're losing control, Robyn. Everyone saw it in court. They saw you break." Robyn's grip tightened on the phone. "So you called just to gloat?" "No," Janelle said. "I called because Meri's not the only one with evidence. She's not the only one with history. You think you're fighting her? But what you're really doing is exposing Cody. And once he crumbles, you won't have anything left." Robyn's breath hitched. "Cody won't crumble. He has me." Janelle's chuckle was dry, humorless. "That's what Meri used to say." The line clicked dead again, leaving Robyn alone with the echo of her enemies' voices. Christine, Janelle, Meri. One by one, they circled like wolves, feeding on the cracks she'd worked so hard to hide. Her hands trembled as she reached into her bag and pulled out a thin folder, documents she'd been saving for years, tucked away like insurance. Bank statements, contracts, emails, all of it tracing back to Cody. Every deal, every hidden dollar, every questionable move. If Meri wanted to prove her worth, Robyn could prove Cody's rot. Her reflection in the motel window stared back at her, pale and wild-eyed, but burning with resolve. "They think I'm afraid of losing him," she whispered to herself. "But they don't understand. If I can't keep Cody, I'll make sure no one else can either." She laid the papers out on the motel bed, her fingers smoothing each page like a general preparing maps before war. The next phase wouldn't be fought in the courtroom alone. It would be fought in headlines, in whispers, in betrayals. Robyn picked up her phone again and scrolled to a number she hadn't dialed in years, a reporter's. Her finger hovered for only a moment before pressing call. When the voice answered on the other end, Robyn's lips curved into a sharp, trembling smile. "I think it's time the world knew who Cody Brown really is." 2 days later, the headline broke. Polygamy, profit, and betrayal. Inside Cody Brown's secret finances. By noon, the story was everywhere. Morning shows, gossip blogs, cable news tickers. Anchors leaned into their cameras, voices dripping with intrigue as they spelled out Robyn's dossier. Offshore accounts, misused funds, tax discrepancies, contracts signed in shadows. The family's name was no longer just a spectacle. It was a scandal. Cody sat at his kitchen table, the newspaper spread before him. His face was ashen, his hands shaking so violently the coffee in his mug rippled like water before an earthquake. This isn't true," he muttered, as though saying it aloud might bend reality. "It can't be true." Meri, standing by the counter, didn't answer right away. She watched him unravel, her arms crossed, her expression unreadable. Finally, she spoke. "Isn't it?" Cody's head snapped up, his eyes wild. "What are you saying?" Meri stepped closer, her tone measured but merciless. "I'm saying you've always played fast and loose, Cody. You wanted the power, the control, the image of the perfect patriarch. You think you can juggle wives and bank accounts the same way, careless, messy, hoping no one ever calls your bluff. But now someone has." Cody shoved the paper off the table, pages scattering. "This is Robyn. She's doing this." "She's trying to destroy me." Meri's voice sharpened. "No, she's trying to free herself. Destroying you is just collateral damage." His chest heaved. He slammed a fist into the table. "I can't lose everything, Meri. I can't." Her eyes softened, but only slightly. "Maybe losing everything is the only way you'll finally see who you are." The room went silent, heavy with the weight of truth. Across town, Robyn sat in her motel room, watching the same broadcast on a tiny TV. Her hands were steady now, her breathing calm. For the first time in years, she felt power shifting, away from Cody, away from Meri, into her own hands. But power is a dangerous drug. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "You've started something you can't control." Robyn stared at the message, her pulse quickening. She typed back with trembling fingers, "Watch me." By evening, the parking lot of the courthouse swarmed with cameras. Reporters jostled, microphones outstretched, shouting Cody's name as he pushed through with his lawyer. Flashes lit up his pale face like a criminal perp walk. Mr. Brown, did you hide money offshore? Are you being investigated for tax fraud? Did your wives know? He barked back only once, no comment, before ducking into the building. But the damage was already done. His image was shattered, his name a headline. That night, Cody tracked Robyn down. The motel door shook under his fist. Robyn, open this door! Inside, Robyn stood in front of the mirror, fixing her hair, her lips painted a shade darker than usual. She let him pound a few more times before calmly unlocking the latch. Cody stormed in, eyes bloodshot, his voice cracking with rage. You did this! You fed them lies! Robyn didn't flinch. She leaned against the dresser, arms folded. They weren't lies, Cody, not a single word. You're destroying me, he roared, pacing like a caged animal. Do you know what you've done? The church is whispering. The state is sniffing around. I could go to prison. Her eyes glittered, sharp and merciless. Good. Maybe prison is the only place you'll finally understand what it's like to live without power. He stopped cold, staring at her. After everything I gave you. After everything you gave me scraps. She cut him off, her voice rising, raw. I begged for your love, your loyalty, your truth, and all I got was your leftovers. You never chose me. You never chose anyone. You just played us all until there was nothing left to play. His chest heaved, his face crumbling. I loved you, Robyn. She laughed, sharp and broken. No, Cody, you loved that I loved you. There's a difference. The silence that followed was suffocating. Cody's rage faltered, leaving only desperation. He sank onto the edge of the bed, his hands shaking. I can't survive this. Not without you. Robyn watched him, her heart hammering, her lips curling into the faintest, cruelest smile. You'll have to try, she whispered. Because this time, Cody, I'm not saving you. Now we've got Cody and Robyn's first face-to-face detonation post-scandal. His desperation, her power finally turned back on him. Cody sat on the edge of the motel bed long after Robyn's words had hung in the air like smoke. Unable to answer, unable to defend, because somewhere deep inside he knew she was right. That everything he had built, his marriages, his authority, his family dynasty, had been a performance of control more than a reality of love. And now the curtain had fallen in front of the entire world, leaving him naked and pitiful in the glow of headlines and flashing cameras. Robyn, meanwhile, stood over him with her arms crossed. Not triumphant exactly, but sharper, steadier, as if after years of drowning in his shadow, she had finally learned how to breathe underwater and could now watch him thrash without pity. Though beneath that coolness, her pulse raced with adrenaline, because leaking his secrets to the press had been a dangerous gamble, and she knew it. Knew there could be consequences beyond humiliation. Investigators digging deeper than she intended, allies turning into enemies, lawyers sharpening their knives. But she also knew there was no turning back, not anymore. And in that motel room where Cody's shoulders sagged and his breath came in ragged bursts, it dawned on her that for the first time in decades, she wasn't reacting to his power. She was dictating it, pulling strings he didn't even know were tied to his wrists. And yet the silence between them was so heavy it pressed against the walls until finally Cody looked up. His eyes red, his voice hoarse as he muttered that he couldn't survive this alone, that he needed her. That despite everything, she was still the only one who ever truly understood him. But Robyn only shook her head slowly, almost pitying, and whispered that understanding someone and saving them were not the same thing, that she was finished being his savior. And with that, she turned her back and left him there, hollowed out on a sagging mattress beneath buzzing fluorescent lights, the motel door clicking shut with a finality more brutal than any courtroom verdict. And when she stepped into the desert night, the air cool and sharp against her skin, she felt both a terrifying freedom and a gnawing emptiness. Because what came next was uncharted. There was no script, no plan, just the knowledge that she had set fire to the house they had all been trapped in, and now it was only a matter of watching who escaped and who burned. While back in the city, Meri stood at her own kitchen window watching news anchors debate whether Cody Brown would face charges, whether polygamy had masked something darker, and though she said nothing out loud, her reflection in the glass carried the faintest smile. Because Robyn had done what Meri herself had never needed to, cut Cody's legs out from under him without lifting a finger, though Meri also knew better than anyone that Robyn's victory would be temporary, that Robyn's rage had always been a wildfire without direction, destructive even to herself, and Meri, with her icy patience, would be waiting when the flames burned down to ash. But for now she let the reporters swarm. Let Cody squirm, let Robyn bask in her temporary crown, because the real game wasn't about exposure or scandal. It was about endurance. and Meri had always been the one who could outlast them all. Though across town in the cramped office of a local journalist who had broken the story, the phone rang with an unfamiliar number, and when the reporter answered, the voice on the other end was steady. Composed, unmistakably Meri's, offering not denial but direction, suggesting where else to dig, what other stones to turn, not to incriminate herself but to ensure Robyn stayed in the spotlight as the source, the instigator, the one whose fingerprints would be on the knife when the legal system finally came calling. Because Meri's brilliance was never in starting wars, but in making sure others were blamed for firing the first shot. And as Robyn celebrated her newfound agency in a dim motel room with the blinds half closed, she had no idea that the very attention she craved was also painting a target on her back. No idea that Meri was already planting stories that framed Robyn as unstable, as vindictive, as dangerous not only to Cody but to the family's fragile remnants. And Cody himself, drowning in shame and paranoia, began to believe those whispers too, because it was easier to see Robyn as a traitor than to face his own corruption. Easier to rage at her betrayal than admit that the accounts, the contracts, the schemes had all been real, all his, all undeniable, and in his desperation he called lawyer after lawyer, each one colder than the last, until finally one of them said the words he had feared most, that he might need to consider a plea if charges were filed, that public opinion was already poisoned, that Robyn's evidence, if legitimate, could bury him, and Cody, a man who had spent decades commanding households, found himself suddenly begging strangers for a lifeline, while Robyn, ever watching, ever waiting, told herself this was justice, this was balance at last, but in her quieter moments she wondered if she had destroyed not just him, but herself, because the power she felt was fleeting, fragile, and already slipping the more Meri maneuvered unseen, and soon enough a new headline surfaced. Not about Cody's finances, but about Robyn herself, anonymous sources describing her as erratic, unstable, possibly obsessed with vengeance, and though she screamed at the television that it was a smear, that Meri had planted it, she could feel the narrative shifting under her feet. And for the first time since the leak, she realized she was no longer controlling the story but trapped inside it, a character written by someone else's hand. Yet even as panic fluttered in her chest, anger steadied her again, because if Meri wanted war, Robyn would give her war, and the battlefield wouldn't be lawyers or journalists but hearts, because she knew Cody's weakness had always been the women in his life. His need for validation, for worship, for someone to tell him he was still the center. And if Meri thought she could strip that from him, Robyn would remind him who had stayed the longest, who had bled the deepest, who had been his mirror when no one else dared look at him straight. And so she plotted her next move not in the language of law, but of intimacy, of secrets whispered in the dark. Because if she couldn't keep Cody's crown intact, she could at least ensure he never wore it for Meri again. And in that thought was a flicker of triumph, a reminder that wars are not always won in daylight but in shadows, in the quiet moments when no one is watching. And as the desert night stretched long and silent, the pieces on the board shifted again, setting the stage for betrayals not yet spoken, alliances not yet revealed, and a reckoning none of them could escape.